This 27 football class is rolling. Let's talk about our favorite players, including who we think is the star of this class.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Harings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode, we are talking about what this recruiting class still needs to do, the most upside and underrated prospects, but we start with the star of the class, our favorite prospects. We got Justin on the show, good friend, obviously, over at the Bucker Report. Go check out what he does. Justin, this class 13th in the country right now per 247. They have locked down in state. They just got a bevy of new players as well. Who is your favorite player right now in this class?
Yeah, you and I talked about this a little bit before coming on. To me, I would say it's a kind of a toss-up between the two safeties. It's DJ Davis and Dustin Roach. I really like them as athletes. I think there's a lot of upside. I like the frames. Both guys are legitimately over 6 foot. I believe Roach is 6'3", and DJ Davis is 6'2". So they're capable of being big, rangy safeties, both of them. I really like the burst on Davis, and I think that Roach is a really fluid guy out there as an athlete. Just he moves really well for a kid that's that big and has the ability to come downhill and lay some hits on people. So I like those two. I think they're both very versatile. I think the speed is there with both of them. One of them, Davis, is a little bit quicker out of the two of them, but to me, they both really project really well on the back end of the defense.
Yeah, I love both those guys. They're not going to be my favorite right now, my top prospect. But to your point, I think both those players, if they were in, I would call bigger hotbed football areas outside of Wisconsin, and in DJ Davis's case, he's out in Delaware. I think one of those kids in Texas, SoCal, Florida, I think they have more offers and more interest. They have the right body type, the right athleticism. I think they're versatile. I think you nailed that. I'm going to go with Cole Reiter as my favorite guy in this class right now, my top guy. I just think he is the prototypical tackle size. He's 6'7", 315. You look at the offer list, Justin, it's Michigan, Indiana, Auburn, Penn State. I mean, you can go down and down, right? If you have a Michigan offer as an offensive lineman, you have an Indiana offer with Bob Bosted, you have SEC offers. I like how he moves at 315. He's not lumbering. I think he is the prototype. To me, he's the star of the class right now. To me, it's hard to find tackles. It's hard to find tackles that come in with size and can move. I think the offer list backs it up. I love Reiter. Right now, he's at the top of my list in 27.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. You and I kind of talked before we came on. This is a very Paul Christie group. Right now, I think you feel really confident with the floor of just about everybody that's in this group. Like, they all seem like guys that are capable of, at minimum, providing quality depth. And we'll see what happens with development. But to me, my concern is I'm looking for guys that I look at and I'm like, this guy has that kind of star quality. I think Reiter might be the guy you look at that is the most likely to hit at a high level. Some of the other guys, it's a little bit more projection and hoping that they get there. He's a little closer to being a guy that actually turns into that.
Yeah, I think he's near the top. He's just it's much easier to project when you're looking at offensive linemen that are already carrying that weight, that already play with some of the technique. It's not the 255-pound tight end that you're hoping, we'll put 70 pounds on him. We'll see how he plays. The Garrett Sexton model where you can dream on it, but I don't know. We'll see.
Ryan's still dreaming on that one.
Dreaming on it. The portal's here. It still happen. It still happen. Doggone it. Let's go to some of our other favorite prospects. So you talked about the safeties. I talked about Reiter. I'll start with, we'll just kind of yo-yo back and forth on this. David Hill, to me, is one of my other favorite prospects in this class. Just came on board. Defensive tackle, 6'3", 300 pounds, 6'2", 300, somewhere in that range. I just think on film for a 6'2", 300-pounder, who I think is going to be able to control that one gap. I think he could be a one tech, a two tech. I think he can play that type of role. He also has burst. Like, he can fire off the line of scrimmage. He gets off blocks. He has a swim move. He doesn't stay blocked when it happens. There's a motor there. Dude, I love the film with David Allen. That's actually the film that's playing behind me, by the way, which I will take you off the screen just for 1 second so people can see it again. But I'll let you chime in here. David Allen is one of my favorite dudes in this class.
And I agree. And that's the one I was going to actually mention too. I think he's great. I compared him to Keanu Benton a little bit on our show. I think they move similarly. And I think they both have really strong hands. I think that obviously Benton was like the ceiling of what potentially happens there with a guy early. Hill, I think, is a little rawer compared to him in terms of his hand use and stuff like that. We'll see what happens with him, but he's listed at 6'3", and if that's legitimate, then that is a really big frame. He's actually pretty close to what Benton was coming in, which was 6'4". So you have a guy that is big for the middle, quite honestly. You'd love to have 6'3" at D tackle. So to me, getting a guy with that type of size and that type of hopeful length and his ability to be disruptive, we're doing a good job of stacking guys that we like that have some of that movement ability on the interior.
Yeah. And we put the film up here. I just had it handy. I didn't actually intend to, but it was handy and we're talking about him. I also see a guy that has multiple efforts, right? He's a player that'll swim off somebody, then the running back will step up, and then he'll beat that block. You'll get off that block and still make a play. It's just motor is not something everybody has. I talk about this a lot. Some people have it, some people don't. You're getting a 300-pounder with motor. This is a guy that had a really big offer list as well. This one to me was a big time get for the Badgers. Justin, who's another guy in this class you circle and you're like, I really like this dude?
Yeah, to me, it's Kors Loken. You have a guy that you look at and say he's got a lot of versatility in terms of the tight end. And in that room, we now have 3 guys with him being added that I feel have really good skill sets. I think him, Bork, and Steck are all guys that profile similarly in terms of where their strengths are, where they're very versatile in terms of being able to, go out and be a pass catcher, but also stay in line and be a blocker if necessary. It'll be really interesting to see how he develops. I think that being in Wisconsin kind of tends to restrict you a little bit in terms of the type of offenses that are typically played, and seeing him get the ability to get to college and really work on that receiving skill set is going to be huge for him.
Yeah, a guy that I think can play over the field. He can play on any down. I think he's a dude who's going to be able to block, but also, expose some matchups against linebackers. It's going to be tough for defenses to deal with him. And he's not somebody that you can just pigeonhole into one spot. And if he goes out here, we know he's going to do this. No, I think he's versatile. I think he's a guy, right, that can do a lot of different things for an offense. And I think he's a guy who we're going to talk who could play early in a little bit, but I think he's a guy that could fit into that. You mentioned DJ Davis. I'm going to bring it up too. This is one of the guys I had written down as one of my favorites. I like both safeties a lot. I think you look at Davis, who a lot of film, Justin, on him as a receiver, and the ball skills are completely evident. Long frame, athletic. There's special teams film of him. He just feels like a ball player, but he's 6'2", long arms, and can run. Definitely a player to me that I said this before. If he's in a bigger area, I think there's more offers. The Badgers benefit here by going to Delaware and getting a kid with that skill set. And I think it's a spot that the Badgers have struggled finding, right? That long, rangy safety. You haven't had a lot of them. It's been more in the box guys or more undersized guys. I think this guy or even a guy like Roach, there's steps to fixing that problem.
Yeah, I think that room has taken a lot of steps recently, and I think we really like the type of athletes they have in there. It's all guys that are 6 foot plus and all can run. And that's going to be massive over the next few years as those guys kind of get their feet wet and start to play. But we don't have anybody that's a slouch as an athlete that's in that room anymore.
You mentioned this earlier, and I didn't write this down, but I thought it was an interesting point you brought up. The star quality of this class. We talked about Reiter. We talked about Loken a little bit. Who in this class do you think has a star upside? And caveat, players can surprise you all the time. Yeah. Nobody really thought Keanu Benton maybe was a star coming in and became an NFL pick, right?
I think, to me, and I go mostly with the offensive line guys, which is very traditional Wisconsin in that regard. Reiter, like you said, is a guy who I think projects to be a really quality tackle prospect. I like both the Mallingers on the interior. I think they're both just have that kind of just road grader type mentality, and just they move well actually for the interior. I don't love them on the edge, but I think they have good feet, and I think they have a really good job with angles. And I think that they have a chance to be really high level guards at the Big Ten level. But yeah, I would lean towards the offensive line guys in that regard, because I think that most of them, the upside is probably getting to the 2 deep at a minimum.
Yeah, I think offensive line's a good call there. We're going to take a break here, come back. We're going to talk about underrated prospects in this class, plus this running back, the in-state, highly productive Kingston Allen. What are Justin and I's thoughts on the running back coming to Wisconsin? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our friends of the show. Quick second to say thank you for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at Indeed. You have workplace chaos. You have deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and that one position that you have that's still sitting open. You got to find a way to fill that spot, but you got other things to do. You got pressure. You're trying to figure out how to do just your job. Maybe it's time to lean into Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles upon your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In a minute, I've been talking to you. Companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Also want to remind everybody that we have a Locked On Everyday program. You can get ad-free episodes of Locked On Badgers. Check the link in the show notes. Okay, Justin, let's go Kingston Allen, because I've had a couple different people reach out and text me, and Kingston Allen is incredibly productive, as productive as you will ever find for a high school running back. And I've had other people reach out and say, I don't know if I see the physical skill set that some of the other 4-star running backs coming to Wisconsin have had. Where are you at on Kingston Allen?
You brought up a really good comparison for him, and I kind of agreed with it when you threw it out there, in Bradrick Shaw, who is also a 4-star. Just saying, do I see top level burst out of him? I have questions on that. I don't necessarily see a ton of elusiveness, but I think he's a really good one-cut back who has pretty good vision and gets downhill and goes. I don't know how many plays he's going to make when he gets out in the open, because I don't see that shiftiness that maybe breaks some runs that you weren't expecting with him, and that'll be a big question. But I do think he's got a really high floor. I think he could be at a minimum, a really solid running back. The question is does he have the ability to take it beyond that?
I want to give credit too. I'm pretty sure I got that comp from Eilers in the Discord. I think he threw it out first. I think I stole it from somebody.
And that's fair. I think it's a really good comparison for him.
I agree. I thought it was good, and so I used it too. I think, I think he's pretty natural between the tackles for his size. I do want to give. I think he shows vision. I think he makes subtle movement without a ton of wasted steps for a back his size. I think that's pretty impressive. There's not a lot of multiple steps figuring out where he's going, and then just relying on the size, because he could do that at this level, playing where he's playing. I think there's some natural running back feel and vision there. I do have some of the similar questions as you do about just the overall skill set from a burst and a top end speed. I think he's maybe more of he's not PJ Hill, but that type of running back, if that makes sense.
I do question if he can get away with running that upright at the college level, because it's going to be a totally different ball game when, number one, you're playing in Wisconsin and D tackles are 220 pounds. They're not significantly heavier than you. You're going to be now dealing with guys that are close to 300 that can throw you off balance by just getting an arm on you. And the same thing with, linebackers and everybody else being 230, 240. They're going to be bigger than you, can really run. When you tend to run that upright, it's much easier to throw you off balance because your feet are kind of staying in line rather than spacing out, when somebody who's lower tends to be able to keep that center of gravity a little bit lower. So we'll see what happens there. There are running backs that have definitely made that work, but there are also guys that struggle with it when they get to the college level. So we'll see what happens with him. I think he's got some tools to work with that definitely gives him an opportunity to develop into something. We'll see what that turns out. And maybe he ends up, proving that what he did at the high school level was just the beginning of it.
You're going to take some wicked shots, though, if you run that upright.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget even the balance stuff. You're just going to take some wicked shots to the midsection from linebackers that are 250, 40 pounds in the Big Ten and run a 4.5. Is production something you care about at the high school level? Because this is another discussion I was having with somebody, and somebody was like, I don't know if I want a running back that's taking a ton of hits and a ton of carries coming into the program. I look at it the other way, Justin. I want a player that's tough, that's proven he can handle a workload, that's proven I think football players are durable because they love football to some degree.
Yeah.
So I kind of like it, but I'm curious if you think a high production level, a high amount of carries coming out of high school is actually a good thing.
How many yards did Henry have his last year in high school? Like 4,000 or 5,000 or something crazy like that?
Yeah, to be fair.
But I'm just saying, he's a mad child, but production matters to a degree. Like if you're doing it at a freakish level,
yeah,
it's hard to equate, how much damage you took when you're consistently breaking everything. And he had a lot of big runs on this. And a lot of times you run out of bounds or whatever, and you're not taking a lot of big hits in Wisconsin. You're just not. There's not that many freak athletes that are on the field that are lighting you up. He's the best athlete on the field in just about every game he plays.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Let me hit you on this one. Underrated prospects in this class. When you look at the 3 stars in this class, give me who you think could realistically be a 4-star prospect when this is all said and done. And just for everyone kind of following along, right now, Kingston Allen's a 4-star kid. Reiter's a 4-star kid. Coors Loken is a 4-star kid. And then you have a bunch of players who are right on the precipice, like a Jack Sorgi, a Reese Hunter Mallinger. I'm trying to think who else. Isaac Miller is like an 87 overall. Who do you think could realistically make that jump?
I think if we see a bump in development and like technique and stuff like that from Miller, he certainly has the prototypical skill set that people want to bump in. I think Davis, to me, has a definite shot at it, especially if he comes back into his senior year and is like 185, 190, where he's put on some decent muscle. Sorgi's, he's basically there. Like, he's a composite 4-star already. I think it's so interesting because I think you have somebody like Reese Mallinger who's got a chance to jump. Like, he may not be a 4-star, but I think it's legitimate that he could be jumping up into like an 88, 89 range. I think Zach Nino is going to probably jump up, potentially to an 87 or 88. Like, he could go up a little bit. I think with a big senior season, Ethan McIntosh has a chance to show some development. Like, these are some of the lower rated guys who have, you have McIntosh, who's got pedigree from his dad, who also was pretty light last year. And like, you put another 20 pounds on him heading into his senior year, he's just going to be bulldozing people because he's 6'7" and will probably be 270, 280. And the guy across from him is probably going to be like 6 foot, 210 pounds or something like that, or 220. And he's just going to annihilate that kid. I think Roach, to me, is a huge one. Looking at this on this, he's probably the guy I would say. He's an 86 right now in 247. I think that he's got, like, when you look at athletic skill set and his size and everything else, like, legitimately as an athlete, if I'm looking at him as strictly just how fluid he is and everything else, I would say he's a guy who should be in that running. I don't think he's going to get to the camps and get the opportunity to jump to that level. But if he were to do it and show out at something like that, I could see him definitely being a guy who looks really good on the measurables.
You definitely hit on one of the ones I wrote down. I think Roach is an obvious one. There's just not a lot of 6'3" safeties that can move like him. It's as simple as that. You're looking at, there's certain positions, and you know this, and the people listening to the show know this because people who listen to Locked On Badgers or Bucker Report, they know ball. At some positions, it's about physical traits. At safety, at corner, at receiver. He's 6'3", he runs well, he locates, he comes downhill, he'll hit somebody. I think he's a high 3-star, low 4-star type safety if he was going to camps, if he was in a different state, if he wasn't committing early, right? Because those things get you rating bumps. The other one, to me, it's Davis Hill, right? It's the defensive tackle. I think that's a very possible senior season. He's maybe in a
he feels like the jump, especially being in Illinois.
Being by Chicago, he's going to get more eyes on him. I think if he wanted to went to camps, drug out his commitment a little bit, he has the physical skill set to me, and with the quickness, again, of a 4-star interior defensive lineman. So those are the two that I had. Sorgi's interesting. You're right. He's kind of already there, but there's not a lot of 6'4" quarterbacks that can run a 4.6, 4.7.
He's very, like, we talked about comparison to him. He really reminds me of Cohen. I just think that he doesn't do a lot of bad on the stuff that you get to see, at least on his highlight film. Now, I'd have to really see what the interceptions look like for him, but a lot of the stuff he does, he seems advanced in terms of like how he processes and looks at the field. Like, you'll see him come off guys and move on to his next target consistently. And that speaks to having a dad who is a quarterback that probably really is like, what do you do in this situation if you see this coverage type of stuff? There's times where I see him look off safeties because he knows that it's what's going to manipulate it the way he needs it for a play to work out. And I think that he just throws the ball similarly. There's some things that we need to see from him to prove that he's got the like playmaker upside, but he has all the tools that you look at and say he can be a really productive college quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I agree. All right, we're going to take a quick second here. We're going to come back, talk about a lot of good that we talked about, but where does this class still need to add bodies? What are the biggest missing pieces in this class, and just how high could this class get towards the end? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. Also want to say thank you, as always, for tuning into Locked On Badgers, making this your team every day and your show every day. Justin, what is the biggest? We'll yo-yo here a bit. There's a few missing pieces for sure. We talked about a lot of the good in this class. What is the first biggest missing piece right now to this class?
Yeah, it's two spots. I'll go offense and defense. It's clearly cornerback and wide receiver. I think you need to get a couple of wide receivers in this class. I think I would really like you. You probably need to get a slot for sure. I think that room is pretty devoid. You probably look at Thibodeau being a guy that's going to play slot in college, I would think. And you have Henry leaving. So you're going to have one guy that you feel truly confident. I guess Kearney is a guy you could probably look at in that spot, but he's a bigger one. If you're looking at somebody that's kind of shifty and fast, you don't really have that other than Henry and Thibodeau. But others outside of that, you just need to get as many athletes in those rooms as possible. And then cornerback, where it seems like Steeples is really – he's in on some good guys. Like, there's some high-level athletes that he's potentially going to bring in. If you're going to talk about where's the most likely next four-star, it's probably a cornerback that he's in on right now. And that, I feel, is like, if this class is going to finish strong, it's going to be because you hit on a couple of guys that are in those wide receiver and cornerback rooms.
Yeah, I'm going to take a big picture, and then I'm going to zero in on one position. And obviously, I agree with I did a show the other day. I said you got to add a couple receivers and corners, and I think at least two at each feels right. I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think at least two at each feels right to me.
Yeah, I think I'd even go three at wide receiver. Like, I think you want at least one boundary, and you probably want a versatile guy, and then you want a guy that's a true slot.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate that at all. I think big picture, I want a couple more lottery tickets added to the class, wherever they are. I just think take a couple swings and some big-time athletes, somebody with some real measurables, somebody that might be a bit of a sleeper. Justin, I think you said it pretty well earlier. This class feels like a lot of really high-floor guys with some guys that we think could be stars for sure. But I would like to see a few more people coming into this class, a few more players that you look at and you could say, that guy, if he develops, could be a complete stud.
You want to see those measurables that pop. DJ Davis has a little bit of it where you look at it and you go, whoa, he's got an extra gear. And Roach had some of it where you're like, man, he moves really well for a big kid. There's not a lot of the wow moments that I look at yet. Now, guys, clearly when they get into a strength conditioning program in college, that can change. But we've had guys like Posa where you looked at in previous classes and you're like, he's just a man-child on the field. And we don't have anybody in this class that I look at and go, wow, what the hell is that?
Yeah, the Wowie Sports Center YouTube moments. The other spot where I think I would love to see them add something to is I just think a disruptive edge type. You know, somebody I like the defensive line pieces they've added. But
the kid out of Chicago that they're going after, Caramel. Did you see him at all?
I did see him.
I haven't reviewed looked at his film yet. But he's big. He's kind of similar to Isaac Miller in terms of his size.
He's got a really good frame. I don't know if he would fit exactly what I'm looking for, but I mean, what I'm looking for sounds so egotistical, narcissistic. I just think
they're moving more towards not to cut you off and not to move in a direction where it kind of gets off key. Do you think they're moving more towards like 4-3 defensive end type guys in some degree? It feels like it based off of, unless you find a guy like Clayton where you're like, yeah, we just can't say no to this skill set. Most of the guys that they seem to be targeting seem to be kind of that werewolf like you're talking about, where they're 6'4", 6'5", and are probably going to play at a minimum at like 250 or 260.
Yeah, I think they've landed a lot. Maybe that's just an easier body type to get. So then you gear what you can do around what you can get to some degree. I mean, it's hard to find the Clayton types. So maybe more like a 4-2-5 that they're gearing more towards. I think it's going to be multiple though, right? I think they want to be multiple. That's what they wanted to be when they came here was multiple. Mm-hmm. And then they kind of got bogged down and, well, we have these pieces, but we want to bring these pieces with. And then you saw a defense that sacked nobody. And they were like, okay.
They're a lot bigger on defense now than they were. So it feels like they're set up for the future at this point.
Yeah, I think so. And this class feels like a good depth class, right? Zagaji, I'm mispronouncing his name.
Zaccanino? Something like that. I hope I'm saying it right. I know he's definitely a kid we need to figure out. We need to hear his name said.
I mean, between the two of us, if you merge them together,
not the guys right? Saying names.
But like he feels like a good depth piece for sure. Get him in the pipeline, develop. I like Hill, I like Miller, but none of those guys. I think here's the thing: none of those guys, and I really like Davis Hill, but none of those guys feel like stars. David Hill. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name. I've called him David.
You're getting him mixed up with DJ Davis and Hill and mixing them together.
But I think my biggest thing here in the front seven, none of these guys feel like stars to me, right? Yeah. Like Clayton did, or Posa did, or Jalen Williams did. Yeah. I don't even know if I see a Lateju type who was really high on. Like, I think they need to add another toolsy guy up front.
I agree with that. I think, and even if it's the linebackers, and we'll see what happens with some of these upcoming, commitments, but they need somebody that's kind of even a guy like Cooper Catalano type, that is just a guy who is going to be really productive and really instinctual, would be great to add in this, where it's not necessarily a freak of nature, but like you watch the film and you're like, man, he's just always in the right spot and he's playing so fast.
Yeah, he's got the Chris Borland disease. He sees things happen before they happen. It's unbelievable. That's the recruiting show, guys. Justin, I do appreciate it. I want to throw you a bonus question. Who leads the team in receptions this year at the receiver spot?
Man, you're going to kill me with this one. I believe you talked about him on your last show. I think it's going to be DiMaggio.
I do too.
I think that he's a guy who's going to grow into that spot. He's been super productive. Out of the guys that they have, legitimately, he's had the most production. So if there was another guy that if I had to take a second, it's probably a toss-up between Rigby and Hilton.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Hilton would be my second. So I think you and I are very aligned on this. I think, listen, DiMaggio caught 50-something balls last year, had 11 touchdowns. He's 6'2", 6'3". He's pretty physically developed. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It feels like the veteran that's may finally hit at that spot. Not that it was other players' faults necessarily. We've had bad quarterback play too, but I think it's DiMaggio. I think that's my guy right now.
Yeah, I think so here's the deal. Here's my perspective on spring with the wide receiver room. I don't think it was bad. I think the receivers actually had a pretty good camp. The problem is we didn't have anybody that we look at and be like, that guy balled out and was just a stud. And you would have liked to seen some of these guys piece together consistent practices where they're just there. That's not to say there's not talent in that room, because there definitely is. It's just you would have liked to see it pop a little bit more. And you're going to need that in the fall. Like, hopefully somebody comes in fall camp and just is a terror to start it. Because I think they need to identify somebody that they trust that can be a third down guy, that you have Colton Joseph looking at and being like, I can trust him to get open on this play for me. Because the last thing you want is on a 3rd and 8, a quarterback looking around for somebody open.
Yeah, it would end up being Jacob Harris is who he's going to end up going to. Is this a more talented receiver class than Fickell's first year, right? Where you brought in Pauling, you had CJ Williams, you had Bryson Green. I think you still had Keontae Lewis in that class. I mean, this is off my head, but
it's so hard to say with how crappy of an offense that they were thrust into. Like, if it was a more traditional offense, do we maybe look at that group of receivers and say they were pretty darn good?
That's what I'm saying. I think we do.
We probably do. it was enough for most of those guys to want to leave, because I think they realized like this offense is just going to be really difficult for me to consistently, because you basically have to be in the same wavelength as a quarterback at all times. It's not just like this is your route, which Phil Longo is just, I don't know, whatever, we want to get into that one, but
we don't.
I like the athletes in this group. I think it's bigger. It's probably bigger on athletes than that room was, but I don't know if it's as polished as that room was.
Yeah, Will Pauling ate that year, but nobody else really did. Now that was not just the receivers' faults, obviously. He is Justin. Go check out what they do in the Bucket Report. This is Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. As always, appreciate everybody tuning in on Wisconsin. Always appreciate when Justin stops by to talk recruiting and everything else. We will definitely talk to you guys tomorrow, and a bunch more coming up this week as well.